My wife and I have been married for 19 years, starting with a relationship that began in college. We have 2 kids who are now both away for college as well. I want to preface that I'm not some cuckold or have some fetish for my wife sleeping with other men. This arrangement happened due to default, you can say. About a year and a half ago, my wife were having sex one night and everything was great. In the next couple of days, I started to have a wide array of symptoms but didn't think much of it. I went to the doctor a while later and was cleared of all sexually transmitted infections through testing and was even cleared for other stuff that wasn't normally tested. Everything negative up to 10 months later, which was what I expected, but the symptoms have still been around to this day. The 2 main ones that were the most demoralizing were the drastic drop of libido and major erectile dysfunction. My wife, in the meantime, had been incredibly kind and patient with me during the first 12 months of this fiasco. She always said she loved me and that while she enjoyed the sex we had, none of that mattered as long as she had me, which helped a lot to hear. I was also very optimistic that everything would get better too for the first 6 months. After that time, I began to get impatient, angry, and depressed that nothing had seemed to change, it seemed. I started to get more distant from my wife, sadly, because I felt like I was letting her down even though she was standing by me through this tough time. She felt my cold shoulder and that made her sad as well. But she continued to let me work through this and find a solution. During this time, the only intimacy we would have was passionate kissing because I'd be frustrated and depressed to even initiate anything else if I could. That wasn't enough for me or my wife in my eyes, and that kept upsetting me even more. At the 1-year mark, I started to see some improvement in my condition. That got me optimistic, but seeing that the improvement began 1 year later, I knew I still had a long road to recovery. I was still upset, and then I felt like I was making my wife miserable and just wanted her to be happy because she deserved it. I thought it through thoroughly and one night brought up the idea of a temporary open relationship to my wife. I told her that I wanted her to have a partner for however long it took for me to get better again. She immediately declined and said she couldn't do that. I told her that it would make me feel less shitty if I knew and felt that she wasn't unhappy with her love life during this time. I told her to think about it and that she didn't have to give me any details if she was ready to do it. Just be smart about what she does. Another 2 months passes, and one night, my wife tells me she's going out for some coffee with her friend. She says it repeatedly and says that she'll be a little late. I realized she was too embarrassed and uncomfortable that she was taking up my offer, so I didn't push the subject. When she came back home that night, I was completely okay and was even happier to see her as she was to see me. For the past 2 months, she has been going out for coffee with who I found out a while later is her co-worker. She has been very considerate during that time. She has called me letting me know when and where she'd be at all times. Always put me and our stuff before her outings. Her outside fling is the last thing on her list, like the way she wants it. On top of all that, she has repeatedly still cheered me on in my recovery and telling me to hurry up and get better because she misses me. Everything seemed great during the past 2 months until yesterday. I was supposed to go out of town for a board meeting yesterday, but when I was about 30 minutes from home, I got a call saying the plane with the other business partners was delayed indefinitely and that they rescheduled the meeting. I headed back home, and when I got home, started going up the stairs as soon as I got in. Got to our bedroom door and I heard skin-slapping sex noises. I feared the worst and cracked the door open a little against my better judgment. I saw my wife having sex with her co-worker. I felt shitty, not gonna lie. I was completely okay with her having a temporary partner, but I just didn't want to see or hear anything about it. And we didn't really have any ground rules about this, so it's not like she was forbidden from having the guy come over. I didn't make my presence known and didn't want to make it uncomfortable for her or me, so I just went back downstairs and left the house for a couple of hours. I know for a fact that what I saw was the first time my wife had the guy over at our place. She had always told me that she preferred to be away from our home for the sake of both of us. And I know she didn't do anything wrong at all technically because we never discussed logistics. My only problem now is, do I tell her that I saw her in our bedroom and that I would appreciate getting a heads up about something like that, or ask that he not come around, or do I just let it go and avoid the awkwardness? The only gripe I have with the second option is that I fear another predicament like yesterday's will lead to me running into that again. And that is something I don't want at all. What are my options?
I 20, female, cheated on my boyfriend. 25, male, with his best friend in his bed. Help. Basically, me and my boyfriend had been together for roughly 8 or 9 months. He worked in London, so for the first 3 or 4 we mostly hung out at my apartment, as he lived about an hour or so away with a roommate. his best friend anyway. One night I was at a work party with my boyfriend who had to leave early. I decided to stay, and I got introduced to a guy who was also in the club but not part of the direct party. We got chatting, and he seemed like a really nice guy. I was kind of pissed off my boyfriend had just left me, so me and the other guy, let's call him Mark, spent the night talking and decided we got on really well. We exchanged numbers and for the next couple of weeks exchanged a few texts here and there just as friends. He invited me to meet up with him and we ended up having dinner together and kissing. He said he had feelings for me, and to be honest I felt the same, but I still had feelings for my boyfriend too, so I didn't know what to do. Anyway, it came up to me and my boyfriend's yearly anniversary and he had sort of been staying with me 4 nights a week. I had only been to his apartment twice, and both of the times his roommate had been out. We ended up going over there as he cooked us a nice romantic dinner, and to my shock Mark was sitting there in the room. My boyfriend introduced me as his roommate, and he must have invited him to the work party too. So I had no idea they even knew each other. He started going off about how close they were and were best friends, etc. I had no idea what to do. I was so close to running out of there, but I managed to get through dinner and me and my boyfriend went to bed. The next day he went off early to work, and when I got up Mark was in the kitchen. He was kind of in shock too, but we got talking and decided we should stay away from each other. We tried to, but couldn't. Whenever I came over I saw Mark and felt drawn to him. One night when my boyfriend was out I turned up after a few glasses of wine and Mark was there. We ended up sleeping together. It happened about 3 or 4 times over the next month and ended up going on for about 8 months. Even in my boyfriend's own bed a couple of times. At that point I knew my boyfriend was really in love with me and I'd been neglecting him and not giving him the attention he deserved, so he had been feeling lonely. He ended up having a one-night stand with another girl and I found out. I know it was only a one-night stand with a stranger and not a long-term affair, but I felt betrayed. We tried to work things out for a couple of weeks after that, but I decided to move all my stuff out and never speak to him again. I was still sleeping with Mark and we decided to go on a secret holiday together for a month, but at the end I decided it was all too difficult and I didn't want anything to do with Mark either. So I ended contact with them both. I didn't speak to either of them in over a year. I've recently started a new job and it turned out my ex-boyfriend actually worked there, which was a huge shock, so we decided to meet up for a coffee and try and be friends. So it wasn't awkward. We started getting on really well, hanging out, and I said I'd like to keep him in my life as a friend. He apologized for cheating on me one night stand and I decided to be honest with him and tell him about my affair with Mark. He was furious and threw Mark out. Said to me that I'm a horrible, disgusting person. But he cheated too. So how can he have a go at me other an act he himself took part in? He said what I did was a million times worse, to sleep with his best friend in his bed. But I said yes, it's bad, but he also did wrong by having a one-night stand, and I don't think I'm worse than him. He has now blocked me on everything and gives me dirty looks at work and ignores me. I don't think that's fair as I forgave him for the one-night stand, so don't you think I'm being treated quite unfairly?